Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, VJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to share on social media and bring others along with us on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. If you're new to the podcast or haven't yet subscribed, it would mean the world to us if you did that now. Also, post about it, rate and review. You will not believe how that helps get this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders just like you. And we are wrapping up our last in this series called Effectiveness, episode 6-5, Effective Decisions. Man, I am pumped for this.
I am too.
Let's do it.
Can I point out the air date for this? We're recording this advanced. This is not live. Although we're going to do some more live episodes in the near future.
Yeah.
Oh, we're
Nice
excited about that. We'll let you know that through social media channels and other stuff. Our hope is to be able to go live, which would create a way for us to interact more, engage with questions that coming in through Facebook and YouTube, of be able to engage with the questions in real time that you may have, and then to still take that, clip it, and then put it out on the regular podcast to come out
to all the platforms. That's a great note.
Yeah. But the air date on this is January 27th, 2021, which means I am now 37 years old.
Oh, happy birthday in advance.
Thanks, man.
Happy birthday in advance. It's like Back to the Future for the future of your birthday.
Woo, my head's spinning. It must be because of old age that I don't understand that. So effective decisions. So I have loved this series that we've done on effectiveness. I hope it's been helpful. And like we told you, we were tracking through this with our team, having conversations about, hey, how we can be more effective. And effective decisions, I just want you to know, the content that I originally had written out here, I'm not going to be real tied to it because I realized I was so focused and I was kind of down in the weeds and all the minutia. And what I want to be able to do within this is I want to give you just like one great big overarching principle. So hopefully when you're done listening to this today, you get done and you've got one concept that's in your head and maybe some thoughts and questions as to how to implement that, but not a long, thoroughly like 12-step process or whatever that may look like. And so here's the thing, like kind of background data on effectiveness, our background understanding from previous episodes that greatly impacts how we need to view decision making. And we've talked about how the idea that effectiveness is about contribution. Effectiveness is about getting the right results, not focused on input, hours worked, or workflow, or any of these other things. It's about the impact that is made. And so what we've talked about is that if you're going to get contributions, if you're going to give significant results, you need to be clear on where your time's going because your time is your most valuable resource. You need to be very clear on what strengths need to be leveraged of you, your boss, and your team as to how strengths are the things that will give results. In the first episode in this series, we talked about exploiting opportunities and not focusing on problems because problems will shore up weaknesses, but they won't create great results. They'll prevent fires, but they won't create great impact within anything that you're leading. And within all these things, what the focus has really been is that effectiveness, results, is about being proactive. You must be proactive with your time. You must be proactive on your strengths. You must be proactive on focusing on opportunities. To simply take whatever comes your way is to be reactive with your time. To allow yourself to be spread into multiple areas is to be reactive with your strengths and to end up operating in the area of weakness. And it's important that we take that same concept and apply it to decision making. Because this is what our typical understanding of decision making is that if I'm going to make wise decisions, if I'm going to make effective decisions, I must be able to properly distinguish between what is good and what is bad, what is better and what is worse, and whether it's two scenarios presented before me or multiple things that I have all these different options as to what to do. I need to be able to decide when the decision comes across my desk, when it's placed before me, I need to be able to decide which direction we need to go. And that, for most of us in leadership, is how we view decision-making. Decision-making is about making the right choice when the options are presented to you. And to understand that that is reactive decision-making. Like, when the things come before you and you're making the right choice, you, by very definition, are being reactive in the decisions that you're making. And I'm not going to even cover on this concept because there are thousands of books written on data analysis, proper forecasting of the future, weighing variables. Like, there are so many books that are written about making decisions within that context that we're not even going to touch on it. And I think that skill does matter. But in terms of effectiveness and exploiting opportunities, that's not where your focus should be. And to say, if you're going to be proactive in your decision-making, if you're going to initiate instead of just react, there's two things that you have to be focused on that are the two types of decisions that you can make that no one else can really make that will lead you towards effectiveness. And the first one is this: it's setting priority. It's not deciding between two options. It's setting priority. And so this is one of the most important roles that I play within our team, is going, this is where we're headed. This is what matters right now. This is what doesn't matter. And I don't do that in isolation. I do that within conversation within our team, but I also don't do it without prior thought, okay? And so I have chunks of time for me to think and just envision where we need to head, to identify opportunities. And that enables me to come into that next step and be able to go, this is what matters. This is where we're focused. We're not simply dealing with the circumstances in front of us. We're creating the future that we want to live in within more than anything else. If you want a helpful resource on this, because there aren't many, there's a great book by a guy by the name of Kent Ingle. He is the president of Southeastern University, and the book is Framework Leadership. We'll have that note in the show notes if you want to check that out. But he does this incredible job of saying, when you gain clarity, a frame like a picture on your short and long-term goals, on your values, on your mission, on your resources, you can more clearly see the future, the picture that you're wanting to paint, the future that you're attempting to create. And so these are priority decisions. When you make priority decisions, this is what matters. All those other smaller decisions are far easier. They're far faster. More people are equipped to make those decisions. And so, like, one of the things that I just laugh at within our church is I go, most people don't realize how few decisions that I make.
Yeah.
And people will come to me all the time, like, Kevin, like people who aren't within our staff team or aren't within our core leadership, they go, hey, I've got an idea about this, or I think we should do this, or what if we change this? And I'm like, I don't make that decision.
Yeah.
I don't. Because other people are empowered to make those decisions, because I've already made the priority decision, and they'll be able to run it through quick filters as to, is this an opportunity we should tackle? Is this something that shouldn't even get our time? Because that priority has already been set and the clarity of direction has already been made. So when you set priority decisions, you are proactive. This is what matters. This is where we're headed. And the second type of decision that you need to make, that only you can make, are people decisions. And this comes in 1,000 different categories. This is what people should be put on your opportunities, because you don't put your best people on your problems. You put your best people on your opportunities. And so you're deciding, hey, how do I leverage the strengths of our team and all the individuals within our team to do these different things? Maybe the most important part of this is what people are added to our team. Which people do we bring into our culture at a leadership level to begin with? Which people get developed? Because I need to make sure that I'm developing strengths and not attempting to simply shore up weaknesses. And so it is looking at it through that framework, not responding to every problem, not responding to every issue, but deciding the deployment of the strengths of the people on your team and which strengths are needed on your team to begin with. And we referenced in an earlier episode the quote by Marcus Buckingham that people are chess, not checkers. Like each person has individual strengths. And so you cannot look at everyone the same. You have to leverage their strengths that are there. But when you're making people decisions, you are setting them up to be able to exploit the opportunities through the priorities that are already there. And let me make a quick note, and then V, I'm going to throw it over to you. And I wanted this to be more simple. Okay. I just wanted this to be an understanding of like, man, it's not reactionary. It's proactive in what you're doing. But I want to make this note, and this is straight from Peter Drucker, and it fully aligns with the purpose of this podcast, that we want to lead people towards hope. We say your leadership will have an impact. We want to lead people towards hope, not despair. And Peter Drucker says this in his book, The Effective Executive, as it comes to people decisions. He says, character and integrity do not accomplish anything, but their absence faults everything. Character and integrity do not accomplish anything. So you cannot hire someone simply because they have great character, or add them to their team because they have great integrity, because character doesn't get anything done. But without character, everything is spoiled. Everything is poison. And so he says, character isn't a plus. It's a non-negotiable. And that has to filter into how we make people decisions. And so, all right, ready?
Yep.
Gloves
ready.
off. Okay.
Yep.
This is going to be fun.
All right.
We are far too permissive of character issues. We are far too permissive in most organizations. And so, like, let's talk about it like this. Blaming is a character issue. If you're in authority over an area, and even if someone on your team blows it and it goes wrong, that's a character issue for you to blame and not take responsibility. Complaining is a character issue. And we just go, oh, I'm being real. There's so much of our culture that has fed this false lie of authenticity when it's really a lack of character that's taking place. So to blame, to constantly complain, to criticize people behind their back, to not accept authority on different stuff, to not accept responsibility. Sorry, that's what I meant on that. These are character issues. And we've so often defined these things as distinctions in personality when they're really a lack of integrity. And I think it's so important to understand, if I could draw back to the people episode, we said great strengths will have great weaknesses. Those weaknesses are not in the area of their character. Like they may be in the area of their character, but you should not accept that. To claim all the credit when you didn't do all the work is a character issue. You should always be willing to recognize your team and the other ones who contributed to it. And so I just want to read that quote again. Character and integrity do not accomplish anything, but their absence faults everything. Character isn't a plus. It's a non-negotiable.
Wow. That is a powerful statement and so true.
I got a little fired up at the end. I didn't realize that we were going to head that way.
I like it. Fire. You know, I want to go back to the whole reactive proactive. I think it's such a timeless topic, but also has times where it's more important than others. And I feel like in 2020, and in our world specifically, just in world, I wrote this down. Being reactive more often than not is a response to poor planning. And the world does this. The world does this all the time. Our world, right? The world in general. The world, and it's specifically when bad things happen. When bad things happen, our response is it's poor planning. It's almost it's an easy response. It's really easy to say, oh, bad. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that in itself is bad, but it's the result of poor planning. And being proactive doesn't just help someone fix the broken things; it helps them prevent it in the future.
That's good.
So
that's good.
And so if that's what's happening, what do we need to do to quit being reactionary people and to be proactive in everything up front? You speak about this all the time, and while we're getting real, it's speaking about people that are destroying their lives in the moment, whatever that might be. And it's like, no, you don't have to wait until you crush your life and you can do stuff on the front end so that stuff doesn't happen. Or if it's out of your control, you're already ready for it in a sense.
Yeah. Let me, I'm going to give a long answer to this, but I think this is really important. Humanity, and I've got a hunch as to how this happened.
Oh.
But humanity has become so short-sighted. Like, we can only see what is immediately in front of us.
Yeah.
We cannot see the long distance of the future. And I think its quarterly earnings report has infiltrated this into our culture to a level that it affects everyone, whether that's your arena or not.
Yeah.
I think that's always there in some way, but I think that thing more than anything else, we have to hit the quarterly earnings projection.
Yeah.
Or the stock goes down, has spread into humanity as a whole. And so the person who even has a vague notion of the future that they want to create and the person that they want to become is now light years ahead of the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was the case. So I read a lot. I spend most of my time reading from people 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds a little crazy, but that gives me what is unchanging in our world.
Yeah.
So I can see what is constantly changing and what will endure even in the present age. And so it's just this amazing thing. And I understand those works that are preserved over 1,000 years. These are our leading thinkers. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the average schmo who's average Joe whose works are being preserved over 1,000 years later.
Right.
But there is such this sense, even in how they talk about the world that they lived in, that it did have this longer perspective. When the culture was more agrarian, at least we had to always think of next harvest.
Yeah.
Instead of just the end of the day today.
Yeah.
We had this longer term view as to how our actions contributed to something greater down the line that has been lost. Yeah. And so the key piece on there is to go, if you have some thinking time, if you chunk your time with some thinking time, and not even clear, I'm not talking a 10-year plan, anything like that. If you just have a vague notion as to who you want to become and the future you want to create, you are monumentally ahead of the rest of the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we talk about this is called effective decisions. And I don't think we realize in the moment the reactions to what's happening is a decision. You know,
yes.
That's a decision. You're making a choice to react in the way that you're reacting, whether it's to appease a group of people, you know, instead of actually soul searching a conviction. But if you would have been proactive, and I do this in my own life, I need to be more proactive, and so I can help prevent that. You talk about as a leader, specifically you as a leader, you talk about what matters.
Yeah.
You talk about what matters up front, proactively, what matters, not in reaction to what happened, before it happens, before whatever happens, you talk about what matters, and then you create values around that, right? You create values around what matters, and that helps us as a team create the future that we want to live out.
Yeah.
Tell us more about what makes you figure out what matters, and so that we can create those values so that we can make the great decisions.
Time and thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really that simple. Like, that's where the episode on chunk your time is so important.
Yeah.
You need time to think about the future. You need time to think about where we're headed in priorities. And I think it's almost become comical within our team how often I say, I shouldn't make that decision.
That's my next question.
I want to be really clear on my language there. Do you want to ask something, or you just want me to keep rolling?
No,
Go.
let me ask that question. That was my next question. I said, how do you push the conversation? That might be the wrong terminology. But how do you move or push that conversation that it's not my call because you've already set the priority? And how do you handle that? Because I think other leaders of other organizations feel in the moment that they say, well, I'm a leader, I better make a decision right now.
Yeah.
And so how do you change that conversation in the moment to reframe it in a way that makes sense to them and also reemphasizes your priority?
Yeah. So the lead is, I shouldn't make that decision. I shouldn't make that decision. And then it's got a number of different spinoffs. I shouldn't make that decision because I'm not good at that. I shouldn't make that decision because I don't have that perspective. Or like, I shouldn't make that decision because that's not important to me.
Yeah.
And I'm clarifying, and that's offensive to people, but I'm clarifying priorities there. So an easy example, I had our tech director, Brian Hill, ask me a question on lighting behind me during the message. What do I want for lighting behind me during the message? I shouldn't make that decision. I am literally the only person in the room who doesn't see the lighting behind me during the message.
Yeah.
I shouldn't make that.
Yeah.
I don't have that perspective. And it is so important to understand the decisions either because of strengths, perspective, or closeness to the situation and problem. So we're talking proximity there, that you should not ever make.
Yeah.
And make that clear.
Yeah.
So I make very few decisions.
Yeah. And I think the fact that is in our culture today and our team works really well is because you've put a value, going back to priorities and what matters, on honesty.
Yeah.
You've made that a value in our team dynamic that, hey, we need to make sure that we're not sugarcoating something or telling them a story that just leads to despair.
And I think the funny thing is the overactive micromanager of a leader views what I do as poor leadership, but what our team sees is an effective team that's as often as, like, it's always something we're working toward, but actually empowered to not just be minions.
Yes.
But to do what they're called to do.
Yeah. They're leaders. Let them lead.
Yeah.
That's great. Hey, I have about 15 more questions, but we are out of time. So maybe we need to pick up this at some later date, maybe a standalone at some point. I think this is great. This is good stuff. What do you want to leave today, episode 65, with?
I want to leave this whole series and just give a call to you to say, hey, be proactive, get great results, make an enormous impact. And the only way that you're going to do that is by being proactive with what you're doing in terms of opportunities, time, strengths, and decisions themselves. I want you to make a great impact, and I hope this will help you do that.
And that's awesome. That wraps up this series and this episode 65, Effective Decisions. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're new to the podcast or haven't yet subscribed, it would mean the world to us if you did that now. Also, post about it, rate and review, or both. You won't believe how that gets this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders just like you. We love hearing your stories of how the podcast is working in your life and business. If you have a story, visit leadinghope.online and send that to us. We'd love to hear from you. All right, everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.